reach it?
They can move that table further over.
Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. 7:05 has continued till,
Well, yeah, the 93 Foster Street, 7-lot open space subdivision. They're working with the peer reviewer and don't have updated plans ready
those
yet.
9 lots.
Yeah, whatever the number is, you're right. Yeah. So that will be, that requested to be continued to the next meeting, so October 4th.
So we don't want nothing next week. Keep them out there, so October 4th, sure.
Right, yeah, they won't be ready for next week.
Okay.
So
So we'll open and continue
vote.
it till, what?
we're going to vote to do that.
I get a vote from you guys to.
Make a motion to continue.
Second.
So moved. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll continue to, at some point on the 4th, we'll let them know when. Do we have any other business to take care of?
We do the minutes?
Minutes, yep.
We didn't have any minutes. As you know, my department assistant got hired by the Building and Zoning and Board of Health and full-time, so she's working over there. She is working overtime on minutes, but as time allows, so it's,
Okay.
she's.
So is there any discussion on replacing the loss of your employee?
I reviewed the posting today, and HR is posting that today. So anytime in the next couple of weeks,
Excellent. Okay.
should have applicants.
How about, we'll do board member updates. How's that?
Perfect.
How was that? Is that a good one? Okay, Anna?
So my update from the Master Plan Implementation Committee is Chair Mike Zeldin went to visit the Board of Selectmen on Monday and talked through the request for $42,000 to be able to continue working on the zoning for the common, and that approval was granted. He then went to the FinCom on Tuesday evening, and they heard his story as well, and they are taking it into consideration, but they are going to be waiting to make any kind of decision until later, after they get a little bit more information and direction from the selectmen.
This is regarding the form-based code.
Form-based code, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you for clarifying for me.
Is that it?
So the Master Plan Implementation Committee is moving forward.
Well, I'm just going to do my update.
I haven't got to you yet.
The Master Plan Implementation Committee is going to have another event for the public to be able to engage in learning more about the scenarios for the common, and the tentative date on that is October 11th. So stay tuned for more information around that. Now I'm done.
Ed, do you have any updates to share
I
with
do.
us?
Before our meeting tonight, I met with the Transportation Advisory Council, which I now sit on. A lot of exciting information was shared between so many members of our community. Bike Pedestrian Council, our town engineer, the Board of Selectmen were there, FinCom was there, Council on Aging was represented, Elder and Human Services, Disabled, and then 2 citizens at large. So we're going to meet quarterly, I think, at this point, and we're going to just be the brain trust to share the information on what all the transportation agenda and items are for all the different boards, and try to make sure that we can make it as cohesive as possible.
Very nice. Anything? You got?
I thought I would mention that our Agricultural Commission, along with the CONSCOM and the Board of Selectmen, are making some progress on how we're going to best manage some of our town-owned agricultural lands. Had a lot of developers come in front of us with the idea and proposal of having an ag piece, but if the town accesses that, we don't really have a best management approach. So at the most recent AgCom meeting, they've made some progress, and right now the concentration is on Nagog and Church Meadow, and possibly there'll be some more with some of these large parcels that are getting developed. So thought that that was a step in the right direction.
Good, very good. Me, I just started with the Senior Housing Advisory Committee.
Littleton Affordable Housing Trust Board of Trustees.
Something like that, whatever that
That one.
acronym is. So, it was very good. It was our first meeting. It was, set up after our town meeting to implement it, and now we're looking at ways to start working on getting some affordable housing in the town of Littleton from a townwide basis. So it was a good first meeting. We're gonna meet once a month, and that seems to be going well. And there was myself, there was Cindy Napoli was on it, Millie McGovern,
Arlette Harvey is chair.
yep, Ballard Harvey, and Dr., I forgot his name.
A good doctor.
Dr. what?
Michaels?
Mike, oh, you were too.
No, I wasn't there, but we had a rep there, but I just happen to know him.
Dr.
And I
Mike.
know he's on that, in that
Yes.
group.
Okay. I didn't take notes, obviously. The first meeting, you're not supposed to take notes the first meeting. But anyway, went up very well. We'll be meeting in a month and we're starting to look at, like, as you're looking at agricultural land, we're looking at town-owned land. We don't have a ton of money set aside for senior housing, but we do have an awful lot of land that we should be looking at as an asset along with senior housing. So that's how we're going to do it. Affordable, senior affordable housing, correct. So that was that. So, anyway. What about you? You got any updates?
Well, I shared before that we're posting the 10-hour-a-week temporary part-time department assistant. It's funded through the current fiscal year. Anyway, so we'll be posting that. I'm looking for applicants over the next couple of weeks. Hopefully we'd be able to interview, well, I would imagine by the November meeting.
Okay.
That's in process.
So, about how many meetings do you do now, in general? Like, yeah.
Between the planning board, all the applications that we have, and the master plan implementation committee, and the two sets of consultants for Littleton Common Revitalization, and trying to look forward to the Taylor Foster Street study that Judy will be doing with us. And then I also tallied up started to tally up the peer reviews, contracts we have underway. It's a little hard to manage all that.
Okay, great. Meetings. The 4th of October is good for everybody? That's the first Thursday, right?
Yes.
We have one next week. We got a continuation of, we're gonna be working on the revisions to the senior housing bylaw and whatever overflow from this meeting is.
In the accessory.
And accessory dwelling,
Yeah,
yes.
that's when the public hearing will open on those zoning bylaw amendments. And let's see, Julie Conroy of Fort Point Associates will be in to do a 15, 20-minute presentation on form-based code. So then question and answers after that.
And so that's that's next week.
Yeah, 20th.
The 20th, and we'll meet on the 4th, and we don't have anything scheduled after that unless we need something else just before town meeting, but.
Right.
No, right, on October 11th, as Anna mentioned, that's the date we have set aside for Littleton Common Revitalization Workshop. A drop-in one like was done at the middle school last year.
And this one's the tentative date, do we have a tentative location?
We're still working
Yet.
on that. We may have to shuffle a little bit.
Okay.
Or we tap danced for 10 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
5 to go.
Oh, a couple more. It's 7:15 is the next one.
Public input?
Public input. Public input about what we just talked about?
Anything then?
Anybody want to ask us any questions while they got us with nothing to do for 5 minutes? We should make a call-in
Good
thing.
gentleman.
I know, I see him in the back. Yes, sir.
Kyle Maxfield, 181 Mill Road. I think it was maybe a couple months back, the property at the end of Mill Road, the former Parley lumber yard, has been sold and is up for redevelopment. I don't see anything on your website lists ongoing projects that you're dealing with. I didn't see anything from them up there. Is that an ongoing project with you guys or no?
They came before us informally to talk about a storage facility for their equipment there.
Right, they also said 80 people, which didn't.
Well, yeah, there's no way, but that's all we've had.
Okay.
There's no definitive plans before us.
Yeah,
no
applications.
No application, nothing.
Okay.
They just came to talk about us in general terms about what they could do to revitalize it.
And then a follow-up, I walked in, I think, as you were saying, but the 93 Foster Street, that's being continued until the 4th, it's not being discussed.
They're not done with it. Everything got sent out to the engineers that came back. Now, their engineer is talking to our engineer, and they're working things out, so it doesn't make sense to come in here unless everybody's got it tied up in a nice, neat little bow for us.
Makes sense? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Chuck Cates, I'm the owner of the property at 1 Monarch Drive. And what is the Taylor Foster Street study?
Across the street. Okay, we have a grant from Mass Housing. The name of the grant was Planning for Housing Production. But the scope of the grant is, and Mass Housing has partnered us with consultant Judy Barrett. And the scope of the study is to look at the area near the commuter rail station and public outreach to find out what the town residents would like to see, how to have that area developed. She was going to start with a market study to see what development would be supported in that area.
And I'm sure it's gonna entail talking to people that own down there, what they're, because everyone has talked in the past about there's not enough amenities down there, that they would like some sort of store, a place to grab some food and everything, because there's nothing at that end of the common, yes.
Yeah.
So she'll be looking at that as well.
And is that closer to the commuter line, just north of Route 2?
It's focused around the commuter rail station.
Yeah.
But it's not specific to that site. It expands beyond the commuter rail station.
Up Foster
Up
Street, to Taylor
Foster
Street.
to Taylor, and
So, I don't think she'll get as far down as the the depot, but up Foster down to Taylor, maybe 2 little ramps at Route 2, who knows how far it will go, but she's at least looking at that area and as a whole. Anyone else?
and up Taylor to the Boxborough line too.
Yeah, the other way up, to the Boxborough line, and the other way up to Linden Square. We should have call-ins from the people that watching us on TV.
We did
tried
that once with
before, and it didn't
PJ.
work very well.
We have enough trouble.
Everybody was sitting up here calling their friends, telling them to call in.
We
Okay.
have enough trouble
So is
with the
it time?
people in the room. Another minute or two. Anything else?
Are there any other continued hearings tonight?
The 245 Foster Street,
Is continuing.
they're gonna have requested to be continued.
Oh, just for the boards, I did ask to be on the and I don't know if they'll let me, but there's an open spot on the search for Keith Bergman's replacement, and I thought it was important that somebody from the planning board be on that, since we do interact quite a bit with the selectmen, so I asked to be put on that. So,
You're on that?
I'm not on it, I just asked.
Oh.
So-
I had mine fill out
I
the
asked
application. You did too?
No, I'm kidding.
Oh, I was gonna say, if you.
Usually you just consult with your board before you go ask. That's all,
Well,
Mr. Chair.
Mark said there was one spot available, and I figured, I would apply to it. Well, you want to do it, I'll more than happy to let you,
I have PMBCs.
see. Anyway, so I just asked to be considered, since there's one spot available. At least our voice will-
7:15, we are there.
Are we there now?
We are there.
Great. Okay, we have a 7:15 public hearing for 151 Taylor Street, major commercial industrial use permit, aquifer water resource, special permit, commercial distribution center. Go ahead.
The Town of Littleton Planning Board will hold a consolidated public hearing on Thursday, September 13, 2018, at 7:15 PM in room 103 of Town Offices. 37 Shattuck Street, to consider the application for special permits pursuant to MGL Chapter 40A and the Code of the Town of Littleton zoning. The application is for a major industrial use special permit under Sections 173-86 through 173-88, an aquifer and water resource district special permit under Sections 173-61 through 173-64, and site plan review under Section 173-16 through 173-19 of the Littleton zoning bylaws. The property location is 151 Taylor Street, map R-10, parcel 14. The applicant is Bullfinch Companies, Inc. The owner is 151 Taylor DE LLC, care of the Bullfinch Companies, Inc. The applicant is seeking special permit approvals to allow redevelopment of industrial zoned property demolition of the existing two-story office building and constructing a 144,600 square foot single-story warehouse distribution center. Application and plans can be viewed at the planning board and town clerk's office during business hours. Do I continue reading the rest? Is that okay?
Should be doing it.
Okay.
Thank you. Would you like to give us a brief overview? Somebody.
Sure. Matt Snell from Nutter McLennan Fish, representing the applicant, the Bullfinch Companies. With me tonight is Mark Diorio from the Bullfinch Companies, General Counsel, Metro West Engineering, Rob Gemma, the architect from Stantec, Eric Wayant, and traffic, Sean Kelly, and I think our landscape consultant's going to be, is back there also from Paul Finger. I won't repeat all of the relief and everything. You did a much better job than me already. So we're just here tonight to discuss the redevelopment of 151 Taylor Street from the existing office building to a distribution center. Just as background, the property's been owned by Bullfinch since 2006. In that time, fully a third of the property hasn't been leased. It's been vacant, and it's been fully vacant for 2 years. So this is an opportunity due to the prime location near Route 2 and 495 to redevelop the property as a distribution center. So we're proposing to demolish the existing building and build a new 144,000 square foot distribution center, associated loading, parking, new septic system, new stormwater system. Just as background, we went to the Conservation Commission earlier this summer, received an order of conditions. The project stormwater system was reviewed by the town's third-party engineer. Those materials are with our application. With Green Engineering, who's also going to be reviewing and commenting on this project for the board. And we've met with the town boards and the town departments, and the application for you, I think, incorporates their comments. With that, I'll let Rob just run through the site plan and
Okay, I'll run through the basics of it pretty quickly. The aerial on the left shows the site outlined in black. We're just on the west side of Taylor Street, obviously right near the intersection of interchange of 495 and Route 2, about 1,000 feet south of the Taylor Street interchange with Route 2. It's a 29-acre parcel. Right now, and the board on the right shows the existing conditions of the site with the two-story office building and the existing 340-space parking lot. So right now, there's about 5.2 acres of the 28 acres that's improved with building and parking lot. A fair amount of the site is wetlands. There's about 18 acres of upland and about 10 acres of wetland on the site. And the plan depicts the buffer zone, the wetlands in brown, and then there's a 100-foot buffer zone outside it. And right now, most of the improvements are actually outside the buffer zone. There is a little small isolated wetland up near Taylor Street that picks up street drainage from Taylor Street, but it isn't much of a factor on the site. Right now, there's see if I can follow my notes here. We've got the existing building footprint's 101,000 or 55,000 square feet for 110,000 square feet of footprint existing. And the proposal shows the general layout. This one has a bit more detail in terms of drainage structures and things like that. So it's a bit of an increase from where we're at right now. Right now, the impervious area on the site's 225,000 square feet, and the proposal would be to increase it to 261,000 square feet, which is an increase of 36,000 square feet. Most of the area that's actually being added, though, is already cleared, so it's already kind of part of the developed area of the site, with the exception of this portion of the site right here pushes into the woods a little bit. The site is basically a former gravel pit, so the soil conditions are excellent. We're all sand and gravel, so in terms, which is obviously why we're in their aquifer protection district, because the site conditions are great for groundwater recharge and that sort of thing. So we're in very porous material, so storm drainage on the site's pretty easy to manage. We've got, in terms of drainage, well, the overall plan in general, we've got 134 parking spaces on the site, most of them in this area, row of parking here and a row of parking here. The west side of the building is devoted to the loading bays, the sturdy loading bays proposed on this side of the building. In terms of our access drive remains exactly where it is today with no significant changes. This is a private drive off of Taylor Street, which serves both this property and the property in the back. So as far as Taylor Street, there's no changes at all proposed for the access. Monarch Drive is a private drive that actually runs through the property itself through an easement. And in working with the fire department, Tom Clancy, they did want full access around the building, so we're proposing a porous pavement fire lane that connects and loops around the Monarch Drive for access from that side of the building. Again, most of the parking will be there. In terms of how stormwater is being managed, we're managing it in a couple of different ways. This front parking lot, which is primarily for visitors and employees, will have 4 bio-retention cells, essentially rain gardens, that the parking lot will run into those rain gardens, and then the rain gardens themselves will have an overflow into a subsurface infiltration system. The main trucking area in this area will have the stormwater discharge into an infiltration system located in this location, and then this rear parking lot will have a subsurface infiltration system under the parking lot itself. And prior to infiltration, all the storm drainage just goes through proprietary treatment systems, storm scepters to remove sediments and oil increases and that sort of thing. So all the stormwater then is going into infiltration systems on site. The rear sidewalk around the building and the fire access lane is actually going to be constructed in porous pavement materials, so that'll fully recharge groundwater as well. So in terms of the aquifer district and groundwater recharge, we're able to recharge all the storm water from the impervious surfaces on the site up to about the 25-year storm. So on an annual basis, we get about 44 inches of rain in this area. That whole 44 inches of rain will go back into the groundwater, and there'll be no surface runoff directly into the wetlands. And as Matt said, we've been before conservation and your stormwater consultant, and we have a order of conditions for that. Right now, the site has a septic system. The existing conditions has a septic system that's basically a standard Title V system that has a capacity of about 7,500 gallons a day. This use is going to have significantly less employees, in the 150 employee range. So the actual capacity, the septic system will be reduced from 7,500 down to about 3,000 gallons a day. So there'll be significantly less septic system effluent going into the ground. And the system's going to be moved further away from the wetlands to this front area. And it's going to include a secondary treatment system so that we remove total suspended solids and BOD. So we'll have a high-quality effluent, and we're not required to do that, but we thought it was a good idea, both for the building owner and because we're in the Aquifer Protection District. Other than that, I think that, in terms of groundwater recharge, I guess one other point is that we're actually gonna increase the groundwater recharge from existing condition today to the proposed condition by about 20%. So we're gonna get more water back into the ground than is there right now. Right now, the property has some catch basin dry wells, but their capacity is about a one-year storm, so we're providing much greater capacity for groundwater recharge post-development than we are pre-development. That's kind of it from the engineering side. Happy to answer any questions.
What's your percent impervious going to be once you've done the improvements?
20.8.
Yeah, it's about 21%, and we're about 15% now?
17% now.
17%.
There's monitoring wells there currently, correct?
I believe there are monitor wells in the back of the building right now.
Okay, so we'll, as part of our process, we'll probably have you talk to the water department if they want to continue monitoring, which they probably will.
Yeah, we may need to install new monitor wells because the site work's gonna disturb them.
Is there going to be robotics going on in there? It's a distribution center, right? Or
The distribution
fulfillment
center,
I think they call
right
it.
now, it's a tenantless distribution center, so
Oh, all right. But you have no idea.
we really don't know who the end user is gonna be at this point.
Okay. Does the board have any questions? Jamie, do you have any questions?
How, can you repeat again how much bigger this proposed project is versus what's there?
In terms of square footage, the building's 144,000 square feet compared to about 100,000 square feet of gross floor area in the existing office. The total impervious area site-wide, and the building, trucking, and parking is going to increase by about 36,000 square feet.
It's one of the old digital buildings, correct?
That I don't know. It was built in '88.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure, it's an old, Littleton has a bunch of them. Ed, Mr. Mullins, do you have any questions?
So you're talking about pervious asphalt in some of the locations? In that, do you have a maintenance plan set up for that?
We do, and the pervious asphalt's really only going in for the fire lane, which it's going to be gated, so it's not used. And the sidewalk around the south and the east side is going to be porous as well. The main parking lot, given the nature of a trucking facility, porous pavement won't stand up to that type of use. So we do have an O&M plan for the entire site and for the porous pavement, but because it's not going to be heavily used, I don't anticipate that that's going to, other than plowing it, I don't expect it'll pick up any sand or that sort of thing.
Well, until somebody puts sand on it because there's ice there, and then you'll have to...
Yeah, the one thing about porous pavement, though, if it's done right, it doesn't ice up because the water moves through it so quickly.
Porous pavement, we've kind of shied away from it for the longest time.
In this application.
I'm not done yet.
In this application, it sounds reasonable.
6 or 8 years ago, we started allowing it for exactly this reason, to get fire trucks around buildings and stuff like that. It keeps the percent impervious lower, and it's an emergency thing only just for the trucks to drive over it. I'm trying to remember what was the first one we approved that for.
Really, Potpourri
Potpourri.
did, and if I'm not mistaken, part of the point has up near the top.
But they weren't the first ones, but Potpourri probably
Um,
was the first one.
This one, yeah, and then the brick pavers in front of the IBM site.
Yeah, we did that also in front of
50 King
that building that was renovated as the IBM site. It made more sense to put pervious pavers up there than impervious, but yeah, it's a great use for that product. Anna?
So I had a question, if you can clarify, that would be great. So in the application, there's a box to check, if you will, about on-site disposal of industrial waste, and you said not applicable. And then on the top of your letter, you indicated that you did not anticipate that there would be any industrial wastewater. So do you have kind of a firm no there?
There won't be any industrial wastewater. I think the application refers to the possibility that there could be, you know,
Solvents and cleaners.
solvents,
Minor-
and
yeah, minor
cleaners and
amounts
things like
of
that
what
in the building.
hazardous.
But there won't be floor drains that go into the septic system or anything of that nature, or into the infiltration system. So I think they just anticipate, you know, that you could have, you know, if it's a distribution center, anything could be shipped there and be inside the building.
But no floor drains, which is the key. So if there's a spill, they've got your,
And there won't be any processes or anything that's using water. It'll be, the sanitary will be strictly for employees
Bathrooms.
using bathrooms.
Which is that little change of words.
Yeah.
Do not anticipate versus not at all.
And actually, we've had instances where particularly an office building has been approved, and then later on a use comes in that requires use or storage of hazardous materials, and then, so that's a separate special permit process for that particular user.
Yeah, we'd have to come back for anything like that.
All right, great, thank you for clarifying.
are there any other questions? Does anyone in the audience have any questions?
We can, if you want, we have, the architect can show you kind of the plan,
Pictures of
we
the
can talk about
building.
traffic, anything else also.
I just want to open
All
up
right.
to the residents first.
Rennie Martin's 174 Foster Street. It sounds like you don't know who the tenants are going to be. It's great that it's by the Cloverleaf, but is there any understanding of the traffic that could be impacting the neighborhoods?
We actually have our traffic consultant here who we can give him a couple minutes, he can speak to it.
That perfect segue in, thank you.
It's like it was planned.
Good
Is that
evening,
was he a plant for you?
good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, my name is Sean Kelly, traffic engineer with Manassas Associates. On behalf of the project team, thank you again for having us tonight. I think what I'd like to do is just take a few minutes to walk through the traffic study, each of the board, how it was conducted, what our findings were, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that members of the board or the audience might have. So first off, I think everyone's familiar with the project site. Again, we're at 151 Taylor Street. Taylor Street is a local road in the town jurisdiction, runs in a north-south orientation, provides access to the Route 2 interchange about 1,000 feet north of the access drive. The project is described to get as the removal of the 101,000 square foot office building and the construction of the 144,000 warehouse building. No changes to access are proposed as part of the project. So the first stage of our study is we went out and collected existing data to get a handle on the traffic conditions as they are today. We did counts both on a daily basis as well as a peak hour basis to get a handle on the traffic that's on Taylor Street currently. I'm talking about peak hours, I'm talking about your weekday morning peak, 7 to 9 in the morning, and your weekday evening peak, 4 to 6 in the evening. And the reason we drill down these hours is these are when your commuter flows are heaviest and when the project's impact would also be heaviest. Today, independent of the project, Taylor Street carries about 5,100 cars a day. That's the two-way flow along the corridor. During the peak hours, it's about 500, both in the morning as well as the evening. In the morning, most of the traffic, about 65%, is traveling northbound, commuters getting onto the Route 2 interchange. And then during the evening, about 80% of the traffic is coming southbound, people getting off of the interchange, returning home. We looked at vehicle speeds along the corridor. This is a 40-mile-an-hour roadway posted. The people do travel a bit faster. The average speed is in the order of about 43 miles an hour. And then the 85th percentile speed, which is the speed we use for design purposes, was about 47 to 48 miles an hour. So we've conservatively used a 50-mile-an-hour design speed for all of our work. We looked at crash histories to get a handle as to are there any safety deficiencies that exist today, particularly at the intersection of our access drive and Taylor Street. The state makes us look at the last 5 years. We reviewed it, and quite frankly, there wasn't a single reported collision there over the last half decade, so no noted safety deficiencies. The next step is we take the volumes we collected, we bump them up, and we basically project out over 7 years. That's the state requirement. So we look at both general background growth, just growth in traffic that's not attributed to any specific project, and then also traffic associated with specific developments that would have specific flow patterns during those busy commuter periods. Other studies done in the area used a 0.5% growth rate per year. We went a little bit higher, went to 1%, just to be more conservative. And then based on discussions with the town, we also included traffic associated with the 245 Foster Street project. It's a 35,000 square foot commercial development near the commuter rail station, as well as parking. Durkee Farms, a 30-unit residential development. And then lastly, we included traffic associated with the 151 Taylor Street reactivation. If this project didn't advance forward, this building would ultimately, be marketed and leased to another office tenant. So when we look at what we call our no-build, we do one analysis, the no-build where this is leased, and then one which is the build, which is the preferred alternative where it's torn down and the project is built.
Can I ask you a question?
Oh, sure.
Do you listen to the radio in the morning when you travel?
Not often, no. It's NPR, but that's about it.
Well, that doesn't work. If you listen to like BZ or something like that, Littleton is on the radio at least once or twice a week for that intersection right there. How are you proposing the trucks coming out of your property, getting on Route 2, on the 495? That cloverleaf or return right there is on the radio there's an accident in Littleton at least once a week, and it's right there.
Within the interchange itself. Yep.
Because of the short proximity
Between
getting on
Taylor.
Route 2 and then getting on 495.
Sure, understood.
And I know it's trucks. I know it's gonna be even different. And are you, hours of operation, are they gonna be different than the commuter hours for deliveries and stuff like that?
I mean, typically, you expect the employees of this facility probably aren't working a 9 to 5 shift. They're probably arriving in earlier in the morning than a typical commuter peak, and then leaving either before or after, depending what those shifts are.
I'd be more concerned about the trucks.
The trucks.
Because it's you're gonna be distributing
Right, and
stuff, so you're gonna have trucks going, and they're gonna go down that ramp to get on 2 to 495.
I mean, they certainly, you wouldn't expect they're all going to arrive and depart during the commuter peak. I mean, it's going to be spread across the course of the day, but will there be some truck traffic that gets on 8 to 9 and gets back off 5 to 6? I'm sure there will be, but it won't be as concentrated as you would have if it were, an office use and all that traffic was leaving at once. So just to run the numbers, the office building, and this is based on ITE data, which is the industry data that DOT requires. The office building would do about 986 trips a day, about 1,000 trips, 500 in, 500 out. This project does about 250 trips a day, about 125 in, 125 out. So it's about a quarter. Peak hour flows at the office building were reactivated. It's about 116 to 117 trips an hour. In the morning, you have about 100 people coming to work. In the evening, you have about 100 leaving. That's the order of magnitude. This project, because the typically work hours are different, and you don't have that concentration during those peaks, it's about 25 to 27. So when you look at the difference, this project will generate about 730 fewer trips than reactivation of the office, and about 90 trips less per peak hours. So it's a significant reduction. However, there will be more trucks, and the ITE data says that truck percentage is typically about 20%. So if you have 250 trips a day, you're going to have about 50 truck trips. To be conservative for our analysis, we assumed a 30% truck number just to weigh the truck volume on the driveway a little higher than what the ITE said. When you look at it, what it tells us essentially is that this intersection here, which is what we focused on, the levels of service, that's your delays, how long you wait, really will not be impacted substantially with this part of the project. And in fact, there'll be less delays for people leaving than there would be under the existing condition if that office was leased. So, in a nutshell, we've looked at traffic operations, we projected the volumes, we're confident this will result in less traffic, both peak hour and daily, although there will be more trucks. Safety considerations, the lines of sight out here are good. Even for the higher 50-mile-an-hour design speed, we need about 400 feet. We've got about 600, so they're well beyond what you need. And again, we've looked at the safety characteristics, and there's nothing there that demonstrates any issues. So we're confident this project can advance, and the impact, particularly as compared to what's there today, will actually be less.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions on the board? Jamie? No?
I have other questions, but not about this.
Okay. Anyone in the audience have any traffic issues? You should listen to BZ.
I'll give it a shot. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're,
Did you want to hear from the landscape?
yes, please. Might as well get everybody who came.
You have
Brief.
a landscape? Brief overview, yes, please.
I have a plan that I could.
Sure.
Sure.
The architect too can just show you kind of the general look if you want to.
What's the building look like? Yes, sir.
Well, he's setting up, I guess I kind of voiced my concern I appreciate, I couldn't see the board because the way it was set up, but we already got the Patriot Brewing or a bottling company down there with all that traffic going up towards that intersection by the train tracks there. I assume that traffic will still head that way as well and possibly down Foster. I'm not sure we have any way to control it, but it's an increase in volume, I assume.
I would think the reason you're looking at this is because you're close proximity to 2 and 495.
I think the intent is that trucks come in off 495, unload, and then smaller trucks leave to 495 and disperse.
Stay out of Foster Street.
You know, unless there's some local delivery or something like that. I mean, that's what would be the intent.
Okay, so I'm Ken Dickinson from Paul Finger Associates, and just provide a quick presentation. The planting plan is fairly basic because we only have some frontage, a small amount of frontage on the public road, and it's being buffered by a forested wetland right at that intersection with the private road going down there. There are existing pine trees that are fairly mature and large, basically taking up most of the space along that berm between the existing parking area, or the proposed parking area, and the private drive. Those are to remain, and we're enhancing that buffer with a couple of pin oak trees, some deciduous shrubs, and evergreen shrubs. Along the backside, the slope is going to be modified with the emergency drive. There'll be 4 other pin oaks provided, and they'll be of a relatively nursery mature size, 3.5 to 4 inch caliber, or roughly about 15 to 20 feet to start off. On the back side, we'll enhance the parking lot with 6 October Glory red maple trees. And lastly, along the, to buffer the dumpster pad, we have a 6-foot height wood fence supplemented by 12 Rocky Mountain juniper.
Now, this building's down, right?
Correct.
So like those trees are really gonna be looking at 495, correct? One's on the side by where the fire emergency exit, fire thing, that's.
Yes,
so
they
your
face
buffer is
southeast.
And the front is so low that you can barely see I think you can only see the roof from the top as you go up and over Taylor Street, correct?
Right.
So
You-
whatever buffering is better than.
Yeah, I mean, there's a 40-foot difference between the street and the bottom, and
They're not gonna make that much
the
difference.
building's only 40 feet high for the most part, so. I do have some images on the back, if you need to see those, and some existing site photographs. But otherwise, it's,
I've seen in the back. Oh, I'm familiar with the project. I don't know if
Okay,
people in the
great.
public might want to see it. You want
Oh,
to
it's
display it at the
full-
back for people?
for a second.
There's not an awful lot of buffering needed because the building's so low where it is now anyway.
It's like in a valley.
Yeah, as you drive by, you don't even know it's there half the time anyway.
Here's a photo of the pin oak, the October Glory red maple, the juniper, rhododendron, bayberry shrubs, and those mainly will be provided in between the existing slope between the proposed parking lot and drive. Here's a view from up top, and as you can see, you can barely
Barely see it.
yeah, see the top of the building currently. And there's already landscaping provided around
Yeah,
the
thank you.
entry sign, so.
Great, thank you. If you want to put that up in the back, if people want to look at it as they do.
Okay, great, will do, thanks.
The architect, you want to give us
How much time do we have?
3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay.
3 minutes?
Perfect.
I'll give you 5
All
if
right,
you need.
thank you. See if I can get to my board without killing myself.
I mean, you realize it's going to be a little tough to show us everything because you don't know who's going to be in there, but.
Correct,
This
yeah.
gives a rough
It's,
idea.
it's more about the exterior and at least the big picture concept at this point. You see that okay? Thank you for your time tonight. My name is Eric Bryant. I'm a principal at Stantec Architecture. Our office is located in Boston. I've been working with Bullfinch companies for over 15 years in a variety of office buildings in Waltham and Cambridge. And I bring that up because we actually don't do a whole heck of a lot of warehouse facilities, distribution centers. And so when we began this project, we started to kind of look back and look at some precedent images of what do these buildings generally look like. And to be honest, they're generally simple structures. We have a joke internally in our office that they all got the Marine haircut. They're these kind of really simple boxes. Because they're built for generally low budgets, they can look a little bit cheap. And so we wanted to take a different approach with this project and really think about the really interesting topography that happens through the site and start to address some of the landscape issues that are out there on the site. So if you're familiar with coming in off of Taylor Street, you're up at that elevated condition as you were mentioning, and you actually look out over the existing rooftop mechanical yard that's there now in the existing building. And so our big idea was really to take kind of this end of the building and kind of tip it up on both ends. So it kind of folds up here and it folds up here. And that hinge point where the forms kind of break away from each other is directly opposite where you come in at the high point. As you make your way down to the low point, let me see if I can grab another image here. So this is kind of an overview of how it sits in the site. So this is that elevated condition here. When you come down the entry drive and kind of turn around and are reoriented back towards the building, we wanted to take the kind of high end of that kind of rising form and create a kind of signature moment for the building. And because it's generally a north-northwest facing elevation, it's not going to get a ton of direct sunlight. So we're thinking that it could be a really interesting, maybe backlit, kind of translucent wall that has just a really soft glow of light that helps people understand that that's where the main entry is. Pedestrians can make their way down this walkway into the front doors here, and it also starts to delineate where the truck bays are on the opposite side. We're thinking right now that the building skin is an insulated metal panel done in two different profiles. There's a kind of horizontally ribbed profile that starts to ground and anchor the building to the site, and then the form of the building that kind of is tipped is done with a vertical expression to be a little bit more light and airy. These buildings generally don't want a lot of glass around them because they have pallets pushed to the edges, so we have just essentially a little bit of glazing at the front door, the entry reception area. We also have a ribbon window in case the tenant decides to build a mezzanine in the future, that there could be some light up there. If not, it just provides light into the warehouse in a kind of clear story fashion. Along the roofscape, we have a series of exhaust fans per structural bay and skylights to provide natural light down through. Because the form of the building is kind of rising, we're trying to use that to hide as much of that mechanical equipment as possible. There's also a series of rooftop mechanical units that are used for heating. As you get a little bit closer to the building, these are those bioretention fields that Rob mentioned. There's a kind of a pedestrian walkway that brings you in underneath that framed piece. Is that 3 minutes, 4 minutes? No? Is that okay? I can stop there. Happy to take any questions or
It's a nice looking building for what it is.
Thanks.
I like the time and effort you put into it. I would just recommend that you take a look at our sign bylaw before you do that facade.
I meant to point that out, that this is an idea of that could be potentially a place where signs could be applied, but it could also just be a backlit glowing wall, and it's just used to kind of signify where the front door is. Good point.
Jamie? All right, so next step is, any questions from the audience before we move on to peer review?
I'm sorry, we just came in, so whereabouts is that going to be?
Name, please, from our...
Robert Martin, and we're from Hitchin Post in Westwood. We got the letter just today to say this meeting was up.
Westwood?
Are we in the right meeting?
That's,
Yeah, must be up next.
That's
yeah,
what, no, you're
that's
on
up
one.
next.
Okay, All right,
When's
thank
next
you.
one?
This is 151 Taylor Street.
Yeah.
So the peer review is
Okay.
underway, and we expect a response from the peer review engineer, I think next week.
Yeah, I met her on the site Monday,
Yeah.
and we walked through the site.
I don't believe any questions now. Do you want to push this off till October 4th? Continue, I meant. Continue to October 4th. By that time, you'll have peer review. Okay, so we'll give you time, October 4th.
With the motion to continue the public hearing till October 4th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's 7:45, a couple minutes late, the point.
Was it you that said, make sure you get the pretty pictures? Somebody said it. Distribution, yeah, right, is it?
Sure.
The Town of Littleton Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, September 13, 2018, at 7:45 PM in room 103 of Town Hall, 37 Shattuck Street, to consider the application for special permit modifications pursuant to MGL Chapter 40A of the Code of the Town of Littleton zoning with respect to site-specific sign standards only. The application is to update signage standards by amending the existing major commercial industrial use special permit approvals. The property location is The Point on Constitution Avenue. The owner and applicant is Littleton Commercial Investments LLC. The applicant proposes to update the sign standards for The Point.
Thank you. Tim,
Yes.
you want to give us a brief overview of what you're trying to update?
Sure. So for the record, Tim Power from Land Strategies, here representing the Littleton Commercial Investments. So where we are, just to back up a little bit, when we, 6 or 7 years ago, I forget the actual date, when we got the special permit for the property, we included a set of sign standards to sort of act as a guideline for tenants and whatnot in the building department to see, and it was a little bit different than the underlying bylaw, which is part of that approval. The planning board had reviewed and felt it was in the nature of the overlay district to approve. So since then, as we had approached this as sort of a design guideline, we had come back to the board a number of times here and there for updates and modifications and discuss some signage specifics along the way that the board said, yes, we still find this is consistent. So a little more recently, in discussions with the building department, they felt that some of these, maybe the paper trail wasn't quite there. So they didn't know, as things came before them, if this was okay or not okay, and had asked us to come back and formalize those things. So we had met, I think, a few months ago and presented this sort of as more of a minor modification, and the advice was to come back more formally, as informally amend the permit where we are. So really what the effort is, as we discussed in the past, is to sort of take things that have been discussed and approved, in front of the board and memorialize them in a new updated document, updating some of the figures that have been presented here into the final document for the board. So what was presented to you in the package was a new set of sign standards, 2 copies of clean version, and then a version that showed edited texts from the currently approved version to the new version along the way.
So, what's the biggest, when we originally talked about it, was basically square footage, size of the sign, square footage in relation to the side of the building and the front of the building, and things like that. So what's really changed since we started with that?
I guess I can walk through, one of the things is I was trying to memorialize in this document what we had intended with the special permit is that these are meant to be somewhat of a guideline, and that the planning board has the authority to make approve a modification if it's not in strict compliance with this. I think that was one of the questions that Roland had brought to our attention. So whether it's a minor modification, I understand there's probably some need to document each tenant almost as if it was, downtown with a sign variance, but along the way, but we wanted to keep that flexibility. And then there was just some other examples of things we had presented before. Some detailing. I'll go through them quickly. We had talked, one of the items was no raceways or for signage, but we came into a situation with Tower in the Square where there was a canopy and there was some conflict, so they created one thing and hid it, so we tried to address that here. One of the items was logos. A lot of tenants would like a logo, and we had some limitations that the logo had to be the same size as the tenant lettering. But we had presented that, Starbucks, for example, and there's some other examples that exist today. So one of the things we wanted to clear up with the logo was allowed if it was still within the total square footage. And then we've added some clarification language on the square footage in that just how storefront is defined, if there's really glass on the building. And then really we added something for the long term to really limit, we didn't want people taking storefront on two sides of the building and pushing it all to the front. So we've sort of limited it to, if you have storefront that's 20 feet on this side, you get 20 feet here. If you have storefront on that side, it's 20 here. You can't move 40 feet to the front and make a giant sign. So it sort of limited that piece there as well. We wanted to make sure that any window clings or whatnot were professionally prepared. Signs in the windows, which I think we had presented early on, we wanted to clarify and state that they're allowed up to 50% of the glass. And then we sort of define that there's some project identity signage, or the big banners you see there around, and to create some of the excitement and the lifestyle center look of the place, that those are sort of unrelated to the overall square footage for signage for the building. Those are sort of to limit tenants from stealing it, but along the way. And then as part of this, there were some other monuments and directory signage that had been reviewed and presented in the past. We've incorporated into our figures here as well.
Okay, well, since I'm the only one that's been on it since the start of this, I guess I'll just give you a little bit of the history. As part of the design, because we worked really hard with Mr. Park and his team to come up with what that whole project was going to look like, the streetscapes, the plantings, the awnings over everything else. I guess we kind of left most of it to the developer to make sure the signs were appropriate for where they were going up there. And because he did such a great job at laying out how it was going to look, we left it up to his eye to continue with what he was doing up there. I don't know that needs to change unless the board has any concerns about it, but we've always, for the past 4 or 5 years, it's been tastefully, as far as I'm concerned, and on the previous boards, it was tastefully done. And he's tried to rein in how much signage is really out there. So does the board have any issues with how this is going to go forward, moving forward to finish out? What are we on, phase 3 now? Or
I think so, and some of this too is that in the event, we'd all love to stay around forever, but if things change or whatnot, and the board changes, the building inspectors change, they need some kind of guideline to fall back on rather than informal discussions along the way, so.
Well, as of right now, the document that was written in 2012, there's several businesses up there that are not coordinating with the agreement that we have. So looking at this updated proposed list here, you're trying to accommodate all the folks that are in violation of that. Party City, for example, is in violation of the original agreement from 2012. You strike out item number D3 to accommodate what they have going on there. So, I mean, we had an agreement back in 2012. We've kind of let it get designed, but nobody's had any respect for the agreement that we've had with the businesses and everything up there.
So I think part of the issue and why we're here is that we've had, through the years, we've had sort of informal discussions and presented them along the way, that the window box signage and the window signage that's there, is something the tenants seek, and it wasn't not clearly noted along the way. So we felt those were in compliance with that agreement and the subsequent conversations, which is sort of the reason why we're here, is I think those were presented to us as an issue, and we've sort of said, no, we felt we discussed them and they were okay because this was a guideline as stated in the permit, so.
How long has Party City been up there?
I want to say that they opened in 2014 or 15, I don't know the exact
We've
date.
been up there for a while.
Yeah.
Right, and as it was being built, they come before us and they explain to us what they were doing. And we pretty much, as the board, let them, it's their buildings, they're designing it. This is entirely different than the sign bylaw throughout the center of town. This is all,
So then why have a sign bylaw?
well, none of this adheres to the sign bylaw. Was
Design
a,
standard for
it was
their-
a design standard for the point.
And so now we're redesigning this to have an item in front of us to accommodate everybody that's up there, and then we'll come back in a couple of years when the rest of the vacant buildings get filled.
I think what he's trying to say is you've pretty much ironed out all the issues that have come up over the past, and you want to put it in there so that everybody knows about it.
And delete items that were originally discussed to accommodate businesses that are up there, that have taken it on their own.
But I think, if I could, I think we've had the discussion, and it just was not updated in this document because we've addressed this document as a
Long
guideline.
before my time on the board.
Well, that
so-
was
And that's-
kind of the point.
That is part of the problem, is we want to memorialize that now, moving forward. So I don't anticipate coming back, and if we do, that will be another, public hearing discussion, notified public hearing if it happens. And if there's anything inconsistent with this, we still come before the board for them to say, yes, it is consistent with the bylaw, so along the way. And we'll be sure to document each
So-
tenant or each item so that there's a better.
So in reading this, so just to echo what Jamie's saying, instead of, because this is a guideline, and this is what was anticipated that the tenants would follow from the residents, and from my point of view, being a latecomer to the board as well, I would say that it's always better to come in and ask, for a change, so that you can change what the compliance is, instead of changing the standards so people can become compliant. And right now, I would say that people aren't compliant with the sign standard that was established. That being said, even some of the asks that you have, like the 50%, not to exceed 50%, Party City exceeds 50%. So they would still have to reduce the number of signs that they have in their windows currently. I understand what you're saying. I do think it's a great project up there. I think you guys have done a terrific job. I like what's happening up there. I am concerned with blight, especially that, signs become like graffiti after a while. You just don't see them. Nobody's reading them. Banners, I'm not a fan of banners because I have two sitting at the end of 15 Great Road, and every day I go to work, I see these silly signs blown in the wind that flop out into traffic. And, if you're talking about those banners, definitely no. If you're talking about sign pole banners to announce a season, that might make sense. You have markings on the, as long as it's not to mark parking. Here's light pole C with a C banner blowing on it, then that doesn't make sense to me. But if you're there to announce a season or an event, I would think that would be okay. But I think it's always better to come in while you're in compliance and ask for a change, as opposed to try to change something to make it compliant.
And again, I fully understand that, and I think the difference is, I think we've come before the board and presented these, like the light pole banners, we presented that we were going to do them with tenants and whatnot, but it wasn't placed in this document. So, again, we felt they were in compliance, even though it was not shown here specifically. We felt we had the discussion and it was approved by the board, or noted that it was consistent with the approvals along the way. So I'm not trying to come in and present new information or correct wrongs that are there. I'm trying to memorialize old discussions that we've had along the way.
We've had, Maren, how many times have they come before us? 20 times?
Oh, I don't know that it's that many, but
A
we've
fair
had several
amount.
discussions.
Right.
So I would just, again, reiterate, blight is my big concern, and if we, like the banners that are on the, the containers, the storage containers that are being used on the site currently, you know, I understand you're hiding the container, but you're also throwing something up there that really isn't much more attractive than what's already there. You know, obviously, we want to see you finish the project, be successful, and get those containers out of there, you know?
Sure.
But just because you have a wall doesn't mean you get to put a sign on it. So I think in those instances, you really, I was never part of a discussion, hey, can we put a sign all the way around our 30-yard container?
Right.
So in those instances, I would say that, to me, that's a violation. So
You know, I hate putting you on the hot spot, because a lot of the times, the person that came here was Mr. Park himself. Would you guys feel better if we asked Mr. Park to come here and?
I think Tim does a fine job
Okay.
presenting. I'm not
All
disagreeing.
right, I'm just trying to say, a lot of the agreements and everything else was done with Sam in front of us. It's not fair to Tim if you're lambasting him by saying that you're just trying to catch up for stuff that he would know what
I don't
he
feel like I was
proposed.
lamb-faced, I think we're having a conversation. That being said, most of the changes that he's looking to make, I would normally agree with. I would just say that right now you have some tenants that haven't agreed with the original sign standard. Now, maybe you had meetings with prior members of the board, and they were permitted in that special permit for their establishment. Like you're saying, you want to memorialize it here. I think it might behoove us as the board to look at some of those decisions and some of those minutes back before we were on the board to see if they really are in compliance with what they were granted as opposed to what's, because we want to make sure we're doing our due diligence, right? So if there was an agreement that they could put 100% of paper on their windows, then I don't want to take it away from them. If somebody sitting here prior to me, you know, by all means.
Sure,
previously, so-
that's the exact premise I'm presenting, so I don't have any.
So I understand what you're saying, so I think maybe it's a look back that we should do for either on the minutes or on the decision, and then make a determination. I really wouldn't oppose much of what you're asking for, I just want to make sure that we haven't given away, and if people are in violation, I want them to know that we don't want to tolerate that. We want to have good neighbors, we want to have good tenants, right? So,
Sure.
you know, I think Party City going, you can tell them right now, go to 50%, we'd love you.
We've talked about Party City
Yep.
and
I
for
think-
a year and a
I
half. I
think
think
that's
that's
the-
probably the main
Yep.
culprit here, but, so how do you want to handle it then? Do you want to do it both amongst ourselves, take a look at it, or would you rather have next Thursday, we're meeting again, do we have time?
Do a site visit.
I'm not so, well, we could do a site visit on our own if you wanted to, and come back and we look at this after having a chance to look at this, maybe discuss it on next Thursday? Does that work?
Next Thursday or the 4th, either one, whatever we
Yeah.
can, whatever agenda we can fit in, that'd be okay, but
Yeah, next Thursday there is time for one.
I'm a fan of the point, so I do a site visit at least once.
Yeah,
a
why don't we
month.
at least, I don't know, go look at Party City, and then, and like I said, if Mr. Park could come, because he was, not, you came quite a bit too, no?
No, that's fine. He's actually has much more knowledge of what's going to impact the marketing and leasing more than I am. Kind of a nuts and bolts guy, and so
And he's way above your
technical
pay
paper,
grade,
right?
right?
Absolutely. Although he says I'm above his pay grade, but
So
I
why don't we
believe
go-
him.
Why don't we go take a look at
I'll
it?
make a motion to continue the hearing to the next available slot for either next week or the 4th of October.
No, it has to be date certain, so
So
Let's say next,
September 20th.
September 20th.
September 20th it is.
We'll all go up and
I
look
made
at
the motion.
Second.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
We on time still?
No.
Sorry. No.
Catching up, though.
Well, we're going not bad. All right, we have
I
an
think
eight.
that's a good idea, given that we've all come up.
Yeah, you know what, it's a great idea, since we all, like I said, what we did was, we gave them pretty much copies. We gave them everything. Please.
You know, one thing we should do
Did you
is,
did you buy something that broke at Party City, is that what it was? Well, we can look at it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
suggest that if we see something that concerns us, that we take photos independently, so we
Sure.
can bring them back for discussion.
For next week, perfect. Okay, we have an 8 o'clock continued public hearing, Jones Meadows, Spectacle Road, Cricket Lane, Senior Residential Development, Special Permit, Aquifer Resource District, Special Permit and Preliminary Subdivision. Okay. We have 4 of the members of the board here. Obviously, Peter could not be here for this evening. He can catch up by watching the video of this, or the Mullinize. He can Ed Mullinize himself and bring himself up to speed. We have sent out the project out for peer review, and I think we want to start with that, unless the board has any other ideas, since it's come back. Jamie, peer review? Start with peer review? Since it's come back and it's what's in front of us?
Yep.
Okay, so,
Judy's letter?
what?
You're with Judy's letter?
Sure, if you want to put it up there. Yeah, let's start with Judy. I don't know if we'll get into Greens. Maybe let's start with Judy's. Greens is more the technical part of it. Not that they didn't do a great job with what they did, but I think most of what we're really looking at for is,
I'm not gonna be able to read it, but.
07, 37, 67, 707. Okay, so we asked Judy to take a look at it, to talk about how it relates to the senior bylaw that we just passed. And she's had a month to look at it. The site consists of approximately 12.2 acres of open agricultural land. I think we all know that. And Mr. Kennard Homes is proposing 30 single-family lot cottage styles on it, 56 parking spaces, 56 driveway spaces, 112 spaces, 11%, 24, age appropriate. What do you want to go down line by line and look at it, or how do you want to do
You're doing
it?
good?
Age appropriation. Judy brings in the AARP, American Planning Association, and the American Planning Association to kind of deal with it, since we've never had to deal with senior project before. And
Without an age restriction?
without an age restriction, or with an age restriction. We've never really dealt with senior housing.
Well, we've had 55 and older, though, right? So that's the age restriction, would be 55 and older.
She's looking at moving about independently and safely within their own home and neighborhood. Community centers, access to obtain goods and services. She talks about the cul-de-sac in the middle of it. Development standards. Several requirements for development design. Architectural planning and design shall incorporate energy-efficient designs, natural heating, cooling, wind, energy generation. No, she didn't really get into that. Structure location near the property lines. There's like, she talks about the 7 homes within the loop of the subdivision, outdoor recreation or gathering. The Jones Meadow project does not appear to have any designated outdoor recreation or gathering areas. There is open space, trails, and nearby conservation land. There's no structures there for people to meet. There's no real dedicated trails or anything else like that. And then she talks about some of the concerns with the layout of Jones Meadows subdivision, the tight cluster, maximum open space, small single-family lots. Really, some of the garages. Building design, decision standard. She talks about the design, the proposed senior housing development will not adversely affect or outweigh the beneficial effects on either the neighborhood or the town in view of the characteristics of the site and the proposal in relation to the site, and considering each of the following: A, social, economic, or community needs were served by the proposal, traffic flow and safety, adequate of utilities and other public services, and quality of the natural environment. Then she goes on to say the proposed homes appear to be designated for empty nesters and retirees. The board will want to consider whether this population with the greatest need for age-appropriate housing and market wants us to look at the housing production plan, master plan, to consider The proposal does have a 20% unit eligibility as he's proposing it. This 20% exceeds the bylaw, which requires 10%, obviously. The action plan. Because of the relative remote part of Littleton, we note that could be more suitable for senior housing such as assisted living residents. Maybe she's saying it's more suitable for assisted living than independent living because there's not a lot of amenities out there. There's not any place for them to walk, the seniors to walk. It's all by car. Everything's going to be out there by car. It's a mobile population for the seniors. Finally, as we noted, according to the special permit application, the proposed development does not provide any services to the future residents. We have to decide if there's enough social or community needs to justify awarding the maximum allowable density by law. Anyway, design, building forms, egress points could not reasonably alter or improve pedestrian bikes or vehicular traffic and safety, reduce the number of removed trees or safety. She just talks about how dense it is and maybe it is too dense. The purpose of the senior residential bylaw is to provide for a variety of housing types, settings, and residential services to meet the needs of the people as they age and people with disabilities. The Jones Meadow plan provides for one type of housing and unfortunately no services. She suggests more housing types and some services to the residents. And she talks about inclusionary zoning, age restriction on it.
You want to explain the age restriction and why it's not on there? Just
When we didn't put it on there, when we originally proposed the bylaw was so that we could count them all for our affordability, and we want to keep under the 10% so we don't have to worry about another 40B coming in. So that's why we didn't put an age restriction on it. We could do it as a deed restriction. We could do it as part of the special permit as we got further if we wanted to, but we didn't do it specifically so the state would not disqualify us for age restriction. So,
Right, it would take some careful wording if you're going to do an age restriction that would still meet DHCD guidelines for, to be included on the subsidized housing inventory. But it is possible to do an age restriction under those conditions.
right, I did a brief synopsis, and I apologize if I didn't do it as well. I'm sure there's a fair amount of that probably have read it online before you got to this meeting, so.
they look like a well-informed group.
Exactly. So I want to at first talk about it with the board before we open up for any kind of public discussion. So who will I start with? You want to go first, Anna? You've read Judy's letter. What are your thoughts about?
Well, I think both peer reviews highlight multiple areas in the applicant's proposed plans that are inconsistent or underdeveloped or simply not appropriate to the attention and spirit of the bylaw.
Okay. Ed?
So a couple things. First, I would want to thank the Kennards for coming forward with probably our first proposal for a senior residential development. I also would want to thank the citizens for organizing and participating in this because I think it's important that people know what's going on, and glad to see that you're all here. With that being said, I'm also grateful that they went to peer review so we could get this information back from our consultant. I think it helps all of us debate and determine whether or not this meets the requirement and the intent of our bylaw when we first wrote it. I worked really hard on it. I know we all did, and it's something that's near and dear to my heart, so I do want to see a senior residential development occur. This, however, I think once we get this report and the Greens report, that it tells us it does not meet the muster of what we had hoped for. So I think that's
Jamie?
right.
I would agree with what Anna and Ed said. as well. There's obviously a need for this, but I think the environment for seniors is important, and I think tucked over in that corner is not an ideal location. So,
Okay. I too agree that it's our first one out of the box. We actually used the consultant that helped us write the bylaw so that we could get into her head how her interpretation of it was. And while I do think, and I think I've mentioned all along, I thought it was too dense. It really is empty nester housing. It's really not it's not designed for seniors. Having said that, there is still a place for empty nester housing. It's just too dense, 30 units out there. It doesn't, to get the heavy density just for empty nesters doesn't do it for me. I know by right, Mr. Kennard could probably get 9, maybe 10 houses out there. I don't want, what you told me when we first did this, not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I still think there is a spot for something out there. Maybe it is less density, something for empty nesters. There's still some sort of a need for that.
I would agree.
But it really isn't senior housing, so.
Right, well, listen, the fact that, I'm grateful that the applicant would go this far down the road with all the opposition they had to get this information for our sake, and for, all the abutters to be able to read, what our consultant said, and I think what a lot of us have felt all along, but I just wanted to have it in writing, so, I'm glad it's here, I'm glad we have the information. I think that there's definitely a use for that property, and I think that they'll come up with one. I would encourage the applicant, the Kennards, to perhaps meet with a group that's so well organized and discuss with them in detail what maybe some of their hopes and dreams would be, understanding that you have the right to do something out there. But to work with them, I think that they're a reasonable bunch, and they'd be happy to give their input, and I know that you'd be willing to work with them, so that would be my recommendation moving forward.
The board have any, I'd like to ask Roger, or have Roger speak a little bit about it, Mr. Kennard.
Yeah, I think a lot of the vision that Judy has with the regulation is more of a campus style, and it would require a lot more land than what we have there, a lot bigger piece of 12 acres. But I think that by modifying the density, and maybe coming back, dropping 30% or so, that we can address a lot of the concerns that are in the peer reviews to make it a better fit.
So you still want, the issue is really the amenities that go with it. There really isn't
Correct.
a lot of amenities there. So it really is.
When you talk about empty nesters, we are going to have an association over there to maintain the property. But if we were to add like a gazebo, just off the top of that, anything we add is going to need maintenance, and it just increases the association fees.
I know, but the seniors want to age in place. That's what this was all about. They want a place to go. They want a place to go with their friends. I mean, even the little things that we didn't think about, like the curb cuts, too many curb cuts, so people have trouble walking just to walk. Right. The fact that there's no really dedicated paths or anything else like that. I do agree that there are other housing needs in town. Our major concern is the senior residential. That's not to say that, like I said, by right you could do 9. Maybe you might want to come back and, if you want to do something, the small scale like we're still talking about, and maybe more empty nester there, maybe a higher density, I wouldn't be opposed to looking at it, would you?
No, I'm not opposed to looking at anything that they're willing to propose. Again, I would just encourage them to work with the neighborhood that are organized around you and get some feedback from them, and then, they can come in supporting it instead of opposing it. I think would be a wonderful event.
do you think anybody really supports development?
Well, I think I think people, when they understand that something is gonna go there,
Let's be
that if they
real.
have,
Something
they
is
have.
gonna go there. yeah.
Right, so why not give them an opportunity to work with the people that are gonna do it and come up with something that listen, nobody's gonna come out 100% happy, but they're gonna have some input and it'll affect how their neighborhood functions.
See, my theory is by right, he could build 9 houses. He could put 9 mansions out there and build the big houses and everything else and the 4 bedrooms and everything else. Why not come back, talk to the neighbors and come up with smaller units like we want? Yes, they're not gonna be senior residential, but they might be empty nesters, and there'll be some affordability to that component of it too, but not, I still want the senior residential, that's my primary concern, but as far as this goes, I think it's a shame to just build 9 big houses out there. What we've done this far, maybe there is some meeting ground, maybe there isn't. All I'm trying to say is something smaller out there and more of them, and still a bigger buffer. I mean, let's be honest, we need a good size, the residents would all be happy with a bigger buffer that they have. We're down to, I'm not even gonna put a number out there, because I don't know what the number is, but smaller little 1,200, 1,300, first-time empty nester kind of deals would be a lot more, I think, appealing to the residents out there. And we're gonna ask them in 2 seconds, but as opposed to 9 big McMansions out there, okay?
Well, and Mr. Chair, if I may add, in addition to listening to the residents who have a lot of voice around what it is that they want or don't want, but also the seniors in the community. I mean, going back to what the seniors have told us, whether they've been here, whether it's on the video, in conversations, come and visit with them at the COA, but lots of opportunity to engage if you choose to, because I know people want to talk.
I'll open it up to the public, how's that? State your name and your address for Maren so she can get it on the, yes ma'am, I see your hand.
Hi, I'm Delisa Laterza, 127 Spectacle Pond Road. Hello, Mr. Kennard.
How do you do?
We sent a petition to the board a couple days ago because we knew it was going to be very difficult to get as many people as we've spoken to, as we've been working with here tonight, between homework and kids and work commutes, and it's just impossible. So as you know, we have written signatures from 80 people, and we have 324 through our change.org. So there is widespread concern over this development. I think that if we would love to sit and speak to Mr. Kennard and his team, I think that would we'd end up with a solution that will work for everybody. What we are most concerned about is the high density. We're concerned about the impact on the aquifer. We're concerned about the impact on traffic on Spectacle Pond. We're concerned about a lot of things, as you know. We would like to have a traffic study conducted by an independent third party. And I think if you asked us, or most of us, we would like to see 9, 10 homes on that property. We recognize it's going to be developed, and that is Mr. Kennard's right to do so. But we would like to have lower density. We feel it will be far more compatible with our neighborhood, with the density, and also would keep Spectacle Pond a lot more safe. So with that, I'll open it up to my neighbors, who I know have a lot to say.
Can I stop just for a second?
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe
You should run the meeting.
What?
You should run the meeting,
No, not so much for that, but maybe you don't understand. He's not getting his 30 houses.
She doesn't.
No,
need to
I understand that.
We understand.
So we're back to square one. So I don't really want to rehash. We all understand that the neighbors down there don't want 30 houses. I don't want to spend an hour listening to everybody get up and say, I don't want 30 houses. We know there's not going to be 30 houses. We basically got peer review, made Mr. Kennard aware of the fact that it's not really what we're looking for.
I'm sorry, what I was trying to get across to everybody is that we have a lot more people who wanted to be here tonight, and so we were just letting the board know.
We understand that, and we understand 30 is too dense, and we made Mr. Kennard aware of that. I don't think we need to, all I'm trying to say is I don't think we need to beat a dead horse. We all understand that 30 is way too much, that we'd like you and your group and Mr. Kennard's group to sit down and talk about another number. He, by right, probably has 9 or 10 houses. We don't want to see big McMansions there. Maybe a higher density but smaller houses there is what I would like to have both sides talk about. Now, you may not be able to, but, so like I said, I'm gonna open up and let everybody speak, as long as it's not about the fact that we have 250 signatures and everybody doesn't like 30 units. If you wanna bring something else up, I'd be more than happy to listen to it. Yes, sir.
I'd like to bring something else up.
Okay.
First of all, I'm really pleased that the town leadership, I'm Rob Arns, 7 Barron Way. And I'm speaking for a lot of people here, we're pleased the town leadership took the steps of doing the peer review, the engineering assessment. I think that was made a major shift, I think, and it indicated to us that actually it echoes many of the concerns that you've heard and we've expressed to you. So that was, I think, a really good move. I'm very encouraged with this discussion here. We get your point. This is the first time I felt very hopeful about where this is going, and it feels like we're being heard. I like the reports, particularly the one from Ms. Barrett. The only thing that I thought was missing would be, there wasn't much discussion about wildlife habitat. You know that area, we do, we've lived there 22 years. A lot of deer in that field. You can see where they bed down. There's obviously deer up in Whitetail. When they're going for water, they're going to head down to that pond. So you've got forest, field, water as an ecosystem. If we cut off some of that access, they might end up, I don't know this, but the possibility is they'll be heading down Speck Pond Road to the wetlands down below. We could have possible problems with animals. So I'd just like to have consider what's the impact on deer, fox, all the, songbirds, all that. So I think this new plan might address that, but I just wanted to bring that up. But other than that, I think it's great that we're having this discussion, and we're open to ideas, and we want to participate.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Jennifer Manicum, 11 Cricket Lane. I'm just wondering, if Mr. Kennard were to come up with a new plan that had a reduced density, how would that be offered? Am I right in understanding that conventional development in Milton is 1 home per acre? Is that accurate?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and then, so it wouldn't be under the senior development bylaw, but it wouldn't be conventional development either, is that true?
He still could come in under the senior development.
Okay, and
He could come in under senior, he could come in under open space, he could come in under conventional.
okay.
I mean, he has all those options for him. So that piece is 12 acres, maybe he gets 10 houses, 9, 10, whatever. Conventionally, he could do an open space of the same amount and cluster it so that he could leave more open space, or he could come back and try the senior again, knowing full well that it's not really senior, but it might be empty nester, and see how we feel about that. So he has 3 options, at least 3 options for him right now.
And it would follow the same process that this particular application followed?
He's gonna have to do a preliminary, take a look at it, we decide how we like it, we send it out for peer review, and then we go to definitive after that.
With public input.
Obviously with public, we do public hearings with public input.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Ma'am, you had your hand up.
Hi, Diana Paradise, Cricket Lane. First of all, thank everybody, the neighbors, the Kennards, the town, for having these discussions. It's uncharted territory. We know you guys are working hard to figure out what the best plan of attack is for senior housing. It's not easy, and you never know what you're going to run into until you start getting into it, right? So we're all sort of in this together. We've all been, I think, very vocal on all fronts about this process. I'm sure it's going to continue as these new senior developments continue to come into play, and it's going to evolve and change over time. I'm very encouraged by what's been going on, and I thank the neighbors and the Kennards for being part of it. I hope that we do have the opportunity. You are our neighbors as well. You're part of the town, and we seriously would welcome the opportunity to work with you guys. You built a lovely neighborhood on Whitetail, and I would welcome a similar neighborhood on that property. I think a number of the neighbors would welcome that as well. And again, we'd be happy to work with you guys, give feedback. You know, it's not meant to be adversarial. We're all trying to figure out what makes the most sense for each of our sort of perspectives. So we appreciate all the feedback and we'd love to work with you guys.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
David Locke, 2 Barron Way. First of all, thank you very much for your tireless work and what you're doing and your understanding from the peer reviews. I just have a question about peer review. Is there a size scope of a project that determines if it goes, like if it's a single home, single build, does that go to peer review as well, or is it needs to be a dense or a community?
Well, most of the time, if it's a special permit, we send it off for peer review.
Or a subdivision.
Or a subdivision. I mean, a single home would not. We could probably figure that one out on our own, but.
Well, I understand that. I just didn't know, and there were questions about that as well, and everywhere, so I wanted
We try to, especially if there's drainage involved and the technical aspect of it, we're not all engineers, so it makes more sense to have somebody who knows a lot more and got a lot of letters and names after his degree than we are. So we sent most everything out to peer review. Thank you. Anyone else? Anna?
So in conversation about what else could be built there if not under the senior housing bylaw, could you clarify, please, how that then works with the HCA, the host community agreement? Because I thought the host community agreement was just for the development of a senior residential community.
Well, I would say the host community agreement goes out the window now, since we couldn't agree to a senior residential bylaw.
All right, I just wanted to be clear about
I would say that he's back on his own with a clean, I will ask town council, but my gut feeling would that he'd be back on a clean slate. He can start from, like I said, he can go conventional, he can go open space.
All right,
If I
thank you.
may,
I just-
Mara, could you ask that question to the council, so that if they're free and clear to go forward with whatever proposal?
Yeah, I think it's good to just get that.
Well, the only thing that the host really addressed was open space. And that it was coming back to us for a senior residential. Now that he's done that and he's been,
Got it. Thank you.
anyone else? What? You were gonna say something.
Yes, process.
Process. It's really up to Roger. What would you like to do?
Well, I'd like to come in on the October 4th meeting with a modified plan that reduces density.
You know, you're still before us. Does the board have any issues with that?
I would request that, Roger, if you can, if you don't mind, try to have a meeting with the organized group, the neighborhood, before October 4th, if possible.
Can I ask who's in charge of that?
Great question.
That is a great question.
Who's in charge of that?
Nobody doesn't want to be in charge.
I will work with you and we'll organize.
All right.
Perfect. That's a great idea. And we can put you on for the November 4th, October 4th meeting.
What's that?
We can put you on the October 4th meeting if you like.
Make a motion to continue the public hearing to October 4th.
Second.
So moved. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And thank you all for working together. And I think that's a nice sign, really.
They
Ready?
follow the rules.
Yeah, see, look at that. Be nice to one another. Thank you all.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, I disagree on this one.
We have 8:30 continued, right? I mean, excuse me, no, that's, the 245 Foster Street is not meeting. So we have
8:30.
an 8:30 continued public hearing, 8094 King Street, senior residential development. Yeah. Would you guys all kind of, if you're not gonna stay, please? We're all getting old. What happened to my computer? Did it die?
Sure, we'll give him a minute. I need a drink.
Happy day.
8:30. What? I have no idea what are they talking about paying this. No, we want the units. We don't want the money.
Offering money because it went down the number.
They're gonna have to think about the budget. Okay, could we keep it down? We'd like to start the next one, please.
Some Gallicans in the
What?
back. Get some talkers in the back.
Do you, somebody want to talk to us about this new plan that's before us?
We'd be happy to.
Good evening. Jennifer Platt from Anderson and Krieger here on behalf of M&M Realty Development, along with Greg Roy, our engineer from Ducharme and Dillis. We have a revised plan in front of you, and what we've tried to do is take some of the feedback we've gotten from the prior meetings and make some changes for you. The biggest significant change you'll see here is these are all single-level cottages. Board member Anna had mentioned at each of our prior meetings that that was something that was a particular concern to the board, and we've tried to address that by putting these all in here as single-level. Again, we're under the senior residential bylaws, so they all have zero clearance access in the front to make it accessible. We have brought down the number of units significantly
17.
to 17 units and have made a small increase in the open space. More of the spaciousness, I think you'll see in the plan, is that given that there's a smaller number of units, we have more space around each unit, and that will go to their individual space, and it doesn't count towards the open space of the project as a whole, but it does make it a more spacious and open development. We still meet the bylaws requirements for the open space, but just want to point out as a design element, it doesn't have the duplexes and triplexes that we had before, which again, in order to meet your comments about having the continuous frontages. So we've tried to address that and give something that is responsive to a number of your comments. Again, this is we're trying to work towards a favorable development here. And Greg, do you have some more input on that?
Well, only just to say that we recalculated density based on the cottage density in the bylaw, so that's not using the townhouse density anymore. So that's a significant change. And just also to say that we've like I said in the past when we presented the last plan with the 26 units, we have this in front of you in sort of concept form. To Jennifer's point, we really are trying to work towards a successful development here. So we want to before we go through and do all the design details that we had in our initial submittal and revise those, we wanted to put this before you. We're interested to hear your feedback.
One thing I'll just add, in terms of sizing on these units, I believe they're all around 1,600 square. 1,300 square feet. 1,300? Oh, 1,600 with the garage.
Without living space is 1,304.
Thank you. They all have a single garage and then one parking space out front, again, to meet the parking requirements under the bylaws.
Does the board have any questions?
Go ahead.
You go first.
You sure? We've gone pretty good in succession if you want to go first. All right. I would say to the developer that after the meeting we just had and with the peer review that we got back from Barrett Associates and talking about all the other things that the previous development was missing, I would also want you guys to take into consideration this letter for your application and talk about the amenities and the things that are also supposed to be part of the proposal, whether it be, more of a mixed use, whether it be more of a active recreation for seniors, what other amenities we could put down there. I certainly, again, am in favor of a senior residential development. I would like to see something come forward that we can support as a board, and the town will support us for when we approve it, so, you know, I think we need to see some amenities in there as well. I think that the density works, I think that, in the fire department's review is acceptable. I just would like to see the amenities that, are, you know, since we've got this peer review, I want us.
May I ask what type of amenities? I mean, we have a buffer, we have area for walking trails, we have the ability to open up the back towards the, on our lot line, towards the high school for walking up there.
In that aspect, I do think you meet some of the amenities, but there are several others that aren't in there, you know. For instance, when they walk out of their houses, you know, what are they gonna walk to? Another house or to the schoolyard to walk around the property, which, again, are all good things. But I think if we get into the standards, you know, and if you give me a minute to find it from the previous development.
But, Mr. Mullen, may I ask where in the zoning bylaw does it state the amenities that are needed?
It was developed, Judy Barrett is the one who wrote the bylaw.
We wrote it with
We're
it.
using the bylaw as a guideline to design a neighborhood.
That's
a senior residential neighborhood.
And I want to let you know that I'm appreciative of your attempts. I'm just
I know
trying,
you are.
so,
And you've made that perfectly clear.
well,
it's
and it's more than that for us. We're trying to make something that, again, we can support as well as have the town support us when we approve it. You know, if we force something down the town's throat, then we're not doing our job as
Oh, no,
elected officials.
I'm not trying to, I'm just trying, when we went back to our team and took the input from the board from the previous meetings and came up with a new design, we used the template of the zoning bylaw to design it.
And our bylaw, 173-150, development standards, outdoor recreation or gathering areas, particularly those that may generate significant noise and or glare, shall be located to minimize intrusion in neighborhood property.
Does not appear to design it. That doesn't reflect it.
What we actually want is a comprehensive development for the seniors. They can age in place there.
And I think we've provided that.
So if I may, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
When we go back to age-appropriate design 173-149, the first part of it, she outlines in the previous hearing, but then she goes back to quote, "The AARP and the American Planning Association have developed guidelines for visitable, livable neighborhoods. The goal is a built environment in which seniors can move about independently and safely, both within their home and throughout the neighborhood, and between their home and the neighborhood and the community centers that they may access to obtain goods and services. The guidelines emphasize walkability, housing choice that include visitable, multifamily, mixed-use units, and easy, efficient, safe access to amenities, including plentiful, accessible open space."
Is that in the bylaw?
It is not in the bylaw.
Okay.
But it was part of our discussions when we were writing the bylaw. So what I'm saying is when we're talking about amenities, these are some of the amenities that we would be looking for.
That she's referencing to another.
She's referencing the American Planning Association and the AARP.
It's not even
But-
on the
but
subject,
not-
that's just guidelines for it.
For what, that's the definition of visitability.
Right, so.
Okay.
So, having built our second senior development, one of the major concerns, and we've been able to accomplish it, is having the association fees be more than reasonable. The rate on White Street is $124 per month. That includes your mowing, your plowing, your shoveling, your trash, your general insurance, and we've done the same thing up on Cooper Farm. By doing more amenities you are just driving the association fee up. Not only what Mr. Kennard said with the maintenance of it, but you're literally pricing people out. We have come forward with 3 different versions, one which I really thought would have met the senior need with the garden-style units, which don't fit anywhere in our zoning bylaw. And I've had previous conversations with Mr. Montanari about that. That is the most economic way to allow seniors to stay in their, what'd you call it, stay in place? Or
Stay in place.
Stay in place. And meet those needs, but it
And
doesn't
have the
fit.
amenities as well.
We then went
With the
to
open
a
space.
townhouse-style second story, which does work, and the people in Shelburne Village have said it works, and to drive costs down. We are now forced with the zoning regulations that we thought we met, with ranch style, which you are in construction. You know ranch style, 1,300 square foot, larger footprint, drives pricing up. That does nothing to help the seniors in our town. But this is what we took from our previous meetings and where we are. Now, if we work together and try and find some form of more recreation or more things, we will do so. But
We'd like some guidance on that, because it's not in the bylaws.
it's not in the bylaw. And we proposed a plan that has no variances, none.
No special.
No waivers, no waiver
None.
request. So, and I sympathize with you guys and your time and your effort, and I appreciate it. I don't want you to think that I'm not grateful for your honesty and your effort. What I'm trying to say is that if we approve something the town can't support us in our approval, then we're failing as elected officials. So what I'm saying to you is what we have here is an opportunity to get it right. And we got to get it right on the first one, because if you guys are the first ones out of the gate, I want to make sure that we can hang our hat on and say, this is a model that we want to see again.
I appreciate that, and
So-
we've taken all the information that you've given us, and this is what we've come to. And it meets, in our opinion, every facet of the zoning bylaw.
So if we took yours and plopped yours where Rogers was, and we had Judy Barrett do a peer review of it, she'd come back with the same answer that she came back with Roger. It's an empty nester project. It's not.
But it
senior
still meets the
housing.
bylaw.
It still
No, it
meets-
doesn't, not for empty, we don't want an empty.
But it meets the bylaw.
Usually the next step is the peer review.
Yeah, is the peer review sent, well, let's do the same thing with Judy that we just did with Roger, send yours out for peer review, and let her come back and tell us what.
Well, I think, and I agree that it
This
should.
this is a different location as well.
Right, so, and I agree, and so my thought is before we send it to peer review, they did ask for some guidance. So before we send them to peer review, maybe we could give them some guidance on what we're looking for, so.
Yeah.
I'm looking for
helpful.
what all the other towns around us have when they do senior housing. They have a clubhouse, they have a place for the people to meet.
Right, so
Okay.
I agree, but just so you know.
But then you have an aspect where you say that you want to keep your price point down. So
That-
either having high,
Right.
clubhouses and all these extra amenities, your condo fees go up.
No,
and
we
you're still at the
understand
s-
that.
and
It's
you're
just
still
a
at different
trade-off,
price
but-
point.
So
But let's
we're
skip
looking,
it.
so it's juxtaposed efficiency, we're trying to find the balance.
Well, the balance is that we're funding by our senior housing bylaw, we're funding $180,000. That is a huge contribution.
Wait, could the
I don't
clubhouse maybe
dispute
be
it.
something that's for like, not just this development? Like, could it be?
No.
It had, the project has to stand on its own for the
No, no,
density.
what do you mean, so
Like I'm saying, if
expand.
you built a clubhouse on this project, could it be like a little bit of a senior center? Like, could it be
More than just a clubhouse for the
more than just a
development?
clubhouse for these 17 houses?
We tried that on our first version with the garden style units.
Oh, yeah, your name, please, for
I'm
mine,
sorry,
by the way.
Janet Field,
Um,
Mattawanaki Trail.
I think the problem with this, and as with Rogers, was if you look at the towns around us, they're all on bigger parcels. They're all on 25, 30 acres that allow more density, more units. They don't feel as clustered. and they get more amenities that go with them. They get a clubhouse, they get a pool, they get.
Are you
So-
comparing it
but-
to towns like Concord and Carlisle?
No, I'm
Like,
talking
Stowe.
Boxborough,
Yeah,
Groton.
But they're all different towns. I don't want to compare to other towns. My other thought, if I may,
You'll drive the price up.
if I may, I think that if we can give them some guidance before we send them to peer review.
Okay.
Because you just said for Rogers Development, there is a place in this town for empty nester housing, so if they can fall under senior residential development, I want to give them a fair shake at this. I think they've been.
I agree totally.
Given
but-
120% effort, I want to send them out of here with some direction before we send it to peer review, so that we can see that we can make something that works.
I think price has an awful lot to do with it.
I don't think we.
That's not your purview.
Then it's not, then it doesn't make sense to do it if you're gonna be at 500,000.
But it should have been in the, it should have been in the
But
bylaw.
if we could just, if I might ask, if we could go back and, Mr. Montanaro, you're being very helpful in giving us some ideas on the amenities that you thought that might be appropriate. I can't say for this parcel what might fit or might work, but we really,
Things that we
so
could consider, yeah.
we don't want to walk out of here and just guess again, because that's wasting everybody's time.
If you're going from a 1-to-1, which is an open space plan, and you're going to a 4-to-1, the amenities that have to go with that and the deal that the town gets out of it has to justify the jump from 1-to-1 to 4-to-1. Meaning, there has to be a lot more in it that we get out of it. If you're not gonna play with the price point and give us more affordable units and more than 10%, then give us more amenities. We're
We are
gonna need.
giving you more than 10%. We're giving you $180,000.
That's one unit. You
It's
have,
not one unit. It's, we have to pay $60,000 for 3 units, Mark.
you're
That's
at,
not the right calculation.
no, you're at 187 for one affordable unit. Your project at 17 is 1.5 or 2, whatever it is, 2 units. You gotta give us 2 units at 187 just to get the density.
Not under the zoning, not under the bylaw. It states that we pay $60,000 per unit.
No, it doesn't.
That was an example. That's an example.
We have at least one, probably 2, because you round up to 187. 2 units at affordable are 187.
10%.
And then the amenities go
Yeah.
on top of that.
For example, if the HUD income limit for a house of 40,
The current limit is,
184.
no,
No,
the income limit,
what's the income limit?
The unit cost is,
not the unit
It's-
cost. This is
it's
the
HUD
calculation
income
based
limit.
on the income limit, twice the income limit. So
So what's the current HUD income limit for a house of 4?
it's published every April. Current is 80,
86, 86, 82. I remember, yeah, it was an 80,000 number, that's what it says.
So 81 is 162,000. Would be the contribution based on that calculation.
Right, that's the range for 1, and then 2 would,
No, that would be for 2. If it's 80,000 for 1, then
no, it's
160 for
twice
2.
the,
Fee in those 2 times.
Oh, you're right. Thank you.
so.
So then it's 320.
The point is, we want something where the seniors, it's walkable.
This is
you-
designed as walkable.
You've got Judy's,
This is the same
So-
density as the current bylaw right now.
Cindy, you had something?
I do. Hi, Cindy Napoli, Springfield Drive, member of the Board of Selectmen. Just listening to the conversation, Liz had written a letter, Liz, her name escaped me, the Director of the Council on Aging. Thank you, about the Jones development, and she put in there some comments about that development, and what she wanted to see for the seniors. I believe it was an area where they can socialize, congregate, exercise. It doesn't necessarily have to be a pool or a clubhouse. Speaking to this development before us, I think if the sidewalks are walkable, if they're handicap accessible, the school is right there, the high school is right there. Seniors have the ability to go to the schools, they can engage and watch a sports game. The church is right across the street. There's a lot of benefits to this location other than just what you're envisioning, Mark, in other communities. And I think we need to take a look at that. I loved the first proposal, the garden-style proposal. I thought that was gonna meet a lot of needs in the community, aside from seniors, a wide range of age groups. It could have accommodated, but that's not on the table right now, so I'm not gonna talk about it. But as far, and you know, as builders or developers, it's cheaper to build up than a single floor, and they've obviously revised this development now to a single floor based on your suggestions. But I don't fully agree that this doesn't meet the needs of some of the seniors in town. I think there's a lot of potential here. You know, they want camaraderie, they need a place where they can congregate and socialize and be together. And you don't necessarily need a clubhouse to get that sort of benefit for the seniors. So I just wanted to comment on that. I thought there was some great comments in Liz's letter. So I don't think we should totally discount this, and I don't think it's fair to compare this to Jones Development at this point.
Cindy, if I may, I want to thank you for your input, because I think that's a great thing to point out, is the church across the street, one. Two, you got a music store right at the bottom of the hill. If a senior wanted to take lessons, there's lessons to be taught down there. There are amenities around, you know, piano lessons, guitar lessons, the high school is there.
No sidewalk.
Well,
There are sidewalks.
there's sidewalks in their development.
There's a cemetery close by, is that an
I
amenity?
can't help the state highway.
No, but that being said, there are sidewalks across the street from the church up to the high school, and there will be a light at some point,
Right.
perhaps.
So can I just add to that, based on the comments in, I think it was Judy's or the engineer's report about Jones Development, with the way the sidewalks were cut, that was one concern, just to make it safe and walkable for the seniors. Another thing was a bus stop for transportation. I mean, those are easy enough amenities to
Right,
incorporate.
and we were gonna get to that with them. I think the other thing
Yeah.
is that, obviously, instead of putting the sidewalk out on the street, is if you put it in front of the houses, on the inside of all the parking, you can benefit from uninterrupted sidewalks. So
Right.
that's the way to do it there, is just move everything to the inside. It's almost like everybody shares the same walkway with a shorter path to their house. You know, and then,
So should be doable?
so,
Speaking for the engineer.
if that's, any more suggestions, any?
I mean, we reduced the number of units, we've opened up the open space more.
Yeah,
We've gone to
listen,
single level,
Yep.
which.
you
Anna was
have worked hard
real
to meet the request of this
on
board.
board.
I'm grateful for your efforts. So, I think you have somebody back.
Yes, way in the back.
Diane Curry, 7 14th Street. So I just feel like this, you can't compare the two different groups that, you know, were here. That the other group that was here earlier, the Jones group, they were totally against everything that the Kennards were for. And, you know, unfortunately, you know, the Kennards are up against a tough haul. And the Field family, on the other hand, have people that are here supporting them. You know, the Webbers are here, you know, and I'm going to butcher your name, so I'm going to say that the owner of Minor Quarters here and myself are all here to support the Field family. And so I just feel like, you know, they've done everything that you've asked them to do. They have decreased the number of, you know, the units that you wanted them to have. They've gone from, you know, the townhouses down to the single floor. You know, every time you've asked them to do something, they've done it. I mean, how much more are you going to ask them to do? I mean, every time you turn around, they're being asked to do something else. I get it that you're saying that the town's not going to support you if you say yes to them. We're part of the town as well, and we're here to support them. So we're voters. We're here to support them. We voted for this bylaw. This is part of the bylaw. I get you're saying you want the amenities, but the seniors can go to the school and use the gym that's there. They have a small gym that's there. It's accessible to the seniors, not just to the high school students. So that's another amenity that they're able to use. So, you know, please, please stop putting up roadblocks. You may not think it's a roadblock, but it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Anna.
So I would like to say thank you very much for considering everything that we have said in past meetings And the one-level space is very important for seniors, so thank you very much. I do think that providing some additional ideas other than what's been said here would probably be helpful. If you want that, which is up, here's a copy right here if you want it, if you don't have it. But I also wanted to mention that coming down to 17, that takes away that whole issue of a second egress and whatnot. And I had a question in terms of the payment for the 2 units. So based on what we were just saying, is that 162,000? Is that the amount that we would be looking at?
320.
320? Okay, thank you.
And that money goes into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Got it. And then I do believe, as Ms. Corey said, that we have seen you come through and you've made changes to try to get this accomplished. And I would say, please continue to be diligent with some of the things that were in the fire, where is it? The deputy fire chief sent a letter in which there are several different items in there, so making sure that whether it's now or at the appropriate time, that you're following all of that, so that, again, if you do what you need to do, then there isn't going to be an issue.
We've had a meeting with them and they're...
Okay, that would be great. Let's see, there was one more item. Oh, yes, from Littleton Water, same thing. Considering the applicant's commitment to installation of a nitrogen removal system, when the time comes, just meet the commitments. I mean, you're being asked to do all these things, so just making sure that you get them done.
And that's just down the way a little bit in
Exactly,
terms of process.
exactly, but
So we
I
need
think
to get
overall, I'm just saying, the more that you all do what needs to be done, then the easier the process will be.
Yeah, and this speaks to my point earlier, once we kind of get a layout that we're, ready to roll with, we will be...
Able to implement.
Yeah, we'll be going right down through these comments and making sure we've addressed them.
Maren, I have a question for you. Access to the high school, is there a way to get them access to the road through the back of the property, looking at the plan? They'd have to work with the town, but I would want to help facilitate that. I don't know if you guys have had any
I've
conversations.
had some conversations with Mike Lynn, and he was trying to see if there was any opportunity where we could use some of the open space that we have and parcel that with some of their space before it gets to the toe of the slope on the area to make, they would love additional tennis courts there.
If you put the picture back up, Michael can point to it on this screen and show you, which would be a huge amenity.
Tennis courts.
So on
How
this,
about pickleball courts?
I got it right here, Mike.
yeah, so
Right up in there.
right in that area right there where that abuts going that way,
There's more space, a little bit more space on the school property.
that's flat right there
Yeah.
before it starts hitting
And
the
it
toe of
does,
the slope.
the slope is sort of right around like that.
So giving them an easement over part of our property to,
Or
Incorporate tennis
Either
courts,
just
because women's tennis courts are...
they need at least additional 2 courts, and then if there was an area where you could incorporate part of our parcel with that before it gets to the toe of the slope, then you could have the access for 4 courts and then have the access going right from the corner right
If
there
I
on
may,
the
Mr.
road.
Chair. Could you get something from Mr. Lynn regarding the conversation, just saying that if possible, you'd be
Yeah,
interested?
because we've had a conversation with Chuck DeCoste as well.
Okay.
Maybe I could meet with both of them and
Just
have a
just a
plan.
letter saying that you guys are in discussion and it's a possibility, working with the town, that you
Yeah.
can do this, so.
And then, I don't know how that would impact our open space number if we donated that to the town, or,
Maybe you could just do it as a mutual easement, so then our people can use the tennis courts and,
And
like, maybe some of the slope, whatever, we can maybe work something out.
Work on it and come back to us, I think that's fine. And then Nick Bates from the Feedback was behind, had his hand up at one point, I don't know if he wanted to say something. Nick, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Nick Bates House, 28 Birch Road. I'm also on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I love that you're paying attention to connecting to the trails and access to the high school. I have two comments. I think both of them have already been mentioned, but the plan as described here right now has sidewalks on one side, so half the houses have sidewalks, or people have to cross the road to get to the sidewalks and stuff. Having all of the houses with direct access to sidewalk is going to encourage people more to walk, and it's just going to make it easier for them getting out of the house, walking around. And then going down to the road, that piece of King Street right there, it just drops you out. There's no sidewalk along the road. There's no crossing there. So if people can go up to the high school and come down on the sidewalk at the high school, there's a crossing there that people could use to get to the church, to the Dunkin' Donuts, to the facilities down there.
So up and around.
Right.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions?
Thank you.
Yes, sir, in the back. Name for Maren, please.
Carl Strathmeyer. We're one of the abutters to the property. We're the proprietors, owners of 80 King Street, which is the building that's shown on the plan there. I just wanted to kind of confirm Diane Corey's statement that, yes, we are also, as abutters, we're in favor of actually any of the versions of the development that we've seen here. And I particularly interested by the comment that amenities don't have to be local to this particular development. And in fact, the letters that you wrote, or the recommendations that you read from whatever organization that was, sounded more to me like, don't make this an isolated development with, unto itself, so nobody ever gets out. My mom lives in such a thing, and she jokes about it being the reservation. You can't get off the reservation. Paths to the high school, you mentioned, Mr. Mullen, people coming down to our music store to take lessons or whatever. We've been running twice a month ukulele jams through the summer, anything like that. And I don't think it's particularly fair to put that, or good for the senior community, not particularly good to have the quote amenities be so localized to the development. And also to place the burden on those solely on the developer of this development if they're going to be used by other residents. So, for example, what skin does the town have in the game? If there's a path to the high school, is there a room in the high school or a gym or something else that the town wants to open up to the senior community? And if the town doesn't want to do that, why are we asking a developer to do that? So, anyhow, one abutter just very much in favor of the direction of development.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to continue this to can we put them on for next week?
Yeah.
Do we have room?
Next
We
week.
want it done by next week.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to put it on to the 1st of October then?
What's the plan for the next step?
We're available next week if
We're
we
available.
can add us on.
Right, but
What are you
what's going
gonna-
to change between now and
Yeah.
next week? And at what point do we understand whether
They're
or
gonna,
not
they're
we
gonna
go
have the
for peer
conversation with
review?
Michael, and they're gonna come in with a draft.
Mhm.
They're gonna work on some of the amenities we talked about, and if you can expand the plan to show some of the existing amenities, high school, church,
Yep.
crosswalk, music store,
The walking trails,
and the walking
sidewalks.
trails. I think with a more detailed amenities plan, I think we'd be
Yeah.
accepting, and
Okay.
we'd send that off to peer review, I think, at the next meeting.
And Maren, I would be glad to drop off a check for the peer review.
At the
Don't want
next
that to
meeting.
start before your.
Yeah, so you have one
Next
more
meeting.
meeting, so I'll make a motion to continue to next week, I forget, September 20th.
Okay.
The second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very
The more
much
you
for
can
your
show us,
time.
the
and-
better off you're going to be. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I can't.
The more you can show us for amenities and
Okay.
how it all fits in, the better off you're going to be
I
that way.
appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Calvin, I'm good.
Make a motion to adjourn?
No, determine before you continue the 245 Foster Street.
Make a
We have
motion to continue 245 Foster Street?
To October 4th.
All in favor?
Yeah, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye. Make a motion to adjourn.
So,
I'll second that motion.
oh, you're not even the chair.
We're done.
Mr. Chair, are we done?
We're done. You can shut us off.
Would you like?